In the news this week, the wrong man, shocking claims of a doctor at a major Perth hospital allegedly calling the wrong person over a patient's death. A WAMA News exclusive.
Also, in another exclusive, viewers back calls for fuel vouchers from Premier Mark McGowan following the latest WMA news poll on cost of living relief. A special event to highlight the importance of organ donation, and later Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loon and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening. A woman has been left traumatised after a doctor at a major Perth hospital allegedly informed her about the death of her father, who was very much alive. WAMA News learned of the incident last Thursday, the 13th of October, at Sir Charles Gardiner Hospital after a patient's daughter received a phone call that afternoon. The doctor involved allegedly called the wrong person to inform her that her father had died, distressing the daughter who'd answered the phone call. The doctor then went silent, allegedly handed the phone to the nurse, and she apologized, saying they got the name wrong and her father is still alive. WAMA News understands the patient involved has epilepsy and had a stroke. The Spicer Centre CEO Suresh Rajan brought the story to our attention. He joins us exclusively this week. Suresh, thanks for your time. This is a major stuff-up. How did it happen?
Hey, look, it's incredible that this stuff-up could even happen. A very dear friend of mine had a father in hospital at Sir Charles Gardiner Hospital, and he's there for a number of conditions, epilepsy amongst them. He'd had a stroke a little while ago. On Thursday of last week, my friend received a phone call from the hospital. She realized it was the hospital because it was an unlisted number. And as it came through, the doctor came online and said, we're ringing you, unfortunately, sadly, to tell you that your father has died. And she's just gone into the state of panic because she didn't know. That was one thing she was not expecting was going to happen. And she was just thoroughly confused, really foggy. And she was burst into tears and suddenly said, so you're telling me that, and she named her father, is dead. And all of a sudden, the doctor's gone silent and said, here's the nurse, and handed it over to the nurse. And the nurse then said, I'm sorry, we got the name wrong. Your father's alive. It just defies anything that you could explain this to. Yes, people do make mistakes, and yes, they do these things. But all of the things there that are really concerning are the fact that, one, they do it by phone call. That doesn't usually happen. You don't ring people and say that, your loved ones died. You usually arrange for them to come in, have a face-to-face conversation, and, you can forewarn them that it's not good news, but at least do it far more gently. Then following that anyway, also the fact that the doctor who had communicated the fact that her father had supposedly died, then handed the matter over to the nurse, and it was the nurse's responsibility to say, sorry, we made a mistake. It just defies logic whatsoever. And then things progress from there to become even worse because later in the day, a nurse was going to administer the afternoon medication and missed it by, they didn't do it in time. It was meant to be done at 2:00 and it wasn't done till well after that. And that can have severe implications for people with epilepsy. Having worked in the epilepsy field for a number of years, I can tell you that it could have killed someone because if you don't have that medication at the right times, it can be incredibly dangerous and you could have seizures and so on. So that then threw out the afternoon medication. Later in the night, it threw out the night medication. And the following morning, they rang to say the nurse hasn't written any details around the medication that was dispensed. So they're not sure what has been given and what hasn't been given. And they're going to have to start again with the whole thing, just taking some estimates as to what was happening and whether the person had done the previous medication or not, we're not sure. So, look, in this case, it's actually worked out okay. He has, he's still around and he's still okay, and he didn't have the seizures. But the potential for something seriously wrong happening at any of those times is very high. And that's what's concerning us at the moment. It's the fact that there just doesn't seem to be the attention to detail and the care that we expect from a first world hospital.
This is a shocking revelation you've put forward, and I'm trying to get my head around it as well. Are you able to tell us more about this incident and what does it mean to our public health system?
Look, it's the main hospital that we have, Charlie Gardiner Hospital, Sir Charles Gardiner Hospital in Netherlands. The reality is that I think that we have talked for a long time about the fact that nurse-patient ratios are inappropriate. They're all being asked to do so much work, much more than they have had to do in the past. And it also shows that perhaps the standards that we aspired to in the past don't seem to be maintained at the present time in the health system. And it is systemic issues. I'm not for even a minute suggesting that there's any staffing issues or anything like that, other than the lack of number of staff. But I think it clearly is a case of the system being so overstretched at the moment. Governments are not spending the money that they're required to spend on this, on the health system, to make it an appropriate and working system. And that's impacting now on the care of patients. And that's the one thing that we'd always warned was going to be the case. And it appears to be very much the case at the present time.
How did the family involved react to this incident? And may I ask, is the daughter of the patient from a multicultural background?
No, she's not, but she is a friend of many years standing. She has some disability issues, but I think that the important thing is that she actually is still in a state of shock, and she's so concerned. I'd offer the opportunity to actually come and have these conversations with the media and so on, and to talk to the media about it. But she really doesn't see herself as being up to. Even in the conversation with me last night, it was very, very emotional and very, very tearful as she recalled exactly what happened on that day. So it was only last Thursday that it happened. So, we're not talking about a long time ago. So it'll take a little while before she actually calms down sufficiently to actually deal with this properly. But she's impacted very badly. And no doubt it'll be on the other siblings in the family as well.
What do you have to say to Premier Mark McGowan and Health Minister Amber-Jade Sanderson?
Look, I think it's something that we've said before, both in terms of the happenings at Perth Children's Hospital and also now at this hospital. We just need to have a really good detailed analysis of what the hospital staffing issues are, and start to deal with all of those things. And I think we need to deal with the culture of the hospitals, and start to spend money on the hospitals to get it back into the place it was before.
Sharish Rajan, thanks for bringing this story to light. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ivan.
And the North Metropolitan Health Service has responded to the story via a statement.
The department says, due to our commitment to patient confidentiality, we are unable to comment on any detail regarding specific episodes of patient care. However, we are always committed to ensuring open and timely communication occurs with patients and/or their family and carers, and we always encourage them to contact our staff with their concerns so we can work together. You can read the full story and more now on the WMN Extra News Club. Subscribe via the link in the description and support independent local journalism. Discussions around the rising cost of living continue, with an exclusive WMN news poll showing that over 50% of viewers support the idea of the McGowan government providing fuel vouchers. It comes after community leaders backed the policy idea, stating more relief is needed for struggling WA families. Over 50% of viewers support a $500 fuel voucher, over 40% say no to the idea, and less than 5% say they want a $350 or $150 fuel voucher. Liberal leader Dr. David Honey joins me exclusively on this matter. Dr. David Honey, thanks for joining us. What's your take on the WMN news poll results showing viewers prefer fuel vouchers as targeted cost of living relief?
Yeah, look, first up, Mel, thanks for the question. And there's no doubt whatsoever that there are an enormous number of people in the state that need a lot of help. And I will say, you know, I've said it before, people on low and low fixed incomes are really doing it tough now. Higher fuel prices, higher rentals, you know, and we've seen underlying utility charges going up. So I think for those people, I think something like you know, having that one-off support with a fuel voucher card would make a real difference. But I do think targeting that to the people who need it is worthwhile.
Our news poll shows a very strong result indeed. What should the government spend the surplus on?
Look, I think they can do a lot. One of the things we've called for in the opposition is for them to, in fact, not increase fees and charges. Now, the McGowan government play a bit of smoke and mirrors on fees and charges. They go, oh, we've actually reduced fees and charges. And you know, the reason it's smoke and mirrors, what the government's done is, in fact, they've put up nearly all fees and charges by 2.5%. But then they've given a one-off $400 rebate on power. But the truth is, the underlying fees and charges are all going up by 2.5%, and next year they'll go up by that again. So next year families are going to get really hit between the eyes. What we've said to the government, freeze them, don't do that 2.5% increase. You don't need to do it. You've got a massive surplus.
While we have you here, what's your reaction towards the hospital death mix-up story that we've broadcasted earlier?
Look, I first of all, you know, my deepest sympathies to the family involved. I think for both families it would have been very distressing for them personally. I mean, just imagine being told that your dad's dead and then it turns out it's not true. What it really reflects is a hospital system that is rapidly descending into chaos. You know, and I have just, well, one, enormous respect, but also enormous sympathy for the medical professionals that work in the hospital and the staff that work in the hospital, doctors, nurses, midwives and the other support staff in the hospitals. I speak to those people regularly, and what's really clear, and actually I think I'll sort of talk a little bit about the insulting way this McGowan Labor government has treated nurses and midwives in their industrial campaign.
Dr. Honey, thank you for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for asking.
The Marlon Johns tragedy has been highlighted again after it was raised during a presentation of a parliamentary bill on railway safety. Deputy Opposition Leader Shane Love read out the Johns family's statement over Marlon's death as they continue to push for a coronial inquest. WAMN News' previous reports were also detailed during the reading. Mr. Love also raised concerns regarding power oversight among transit officers in WA.
The family were able to put their view and to be heard, so that's why I was willing to read a statement which Marlon's sister had actually written, which expressed the family's concern and their desire to ensure that other families don't go through the same situation.
Industrial action among nurses is continuing as public health workers refuse double shifts and overtime workloads. The McGowan government continues to urge nurses and midwives to accept the latest pay offer, despite the fact it won't meet the 10% pay rise demand from the Australian Nursing Federation members. Patient to nurses ratio is the key focus of the negotiation, with the government promising to implement them in the next 3 years.
I think the industrial action is unfortunate and unnecessary at this point. Industrial action should be used sparingly and only when necessary. What we're saying to the Nurses Union is the key claim in your log is ratios, and we've come to the table with that. So I say to nurses, this is a great win. This is a great win. Work with us on rolling it out.
Due to the reduction in PCR COVID testing demands, the WA Health Department announced that 4 testing clinics will be shut down by the end of this month. The Rockingham Hospital's drive-through clinic has already closed from Friday, with 3 other walk-in clinics in Royal Perth Hospital, Broome Health Campus and Bunbury Health Campus will close next Friday, the 28th of October. 2 COVID testing clinics located at Murdoch and Joondalup will stay open between 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. 7 days a week. The Chief Health Officer, Andrew Robertson, stated that West Australians can continue to conduct virus testing with rats provided by the McGowan government earlier this year.
A Perth grandmother has revealed her push to change lives after losing everything to gambling addiction. Speaking to the media this week, Marilyn Martin shared her experience and story of hope, urging others to seek help. Community organisation Centrecare provided psychosocial and financial counselling services to her, seeing around 550 to 600 clients a year. The centre's CEO, Nigel Calvert, says gambling addiction leads to more than just financial losses.
Doesn't matter whether it's $1 or $10 or $100, makes no difference. You just keep feeding those electronic machines. So, you know, it's critical that, and then my son said, okay, we'll go in and discuss it, and that's what we did, and that's how we got involved with Centrecare.
I was talking to one of our counsellors the other day, and he was saying that there was I guess quite a well-off person who had lost over $100,000 in less than 6 months. So yeah, we see everything from people who lose, you know, $20,000 over a couple of years, right up to significant, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a very short space of time.
NASA's Curiosity rover has reached a major exploration milestone in Mars, with the robot reaching the salty mineral region of Mount Shape. The latest picture beamed back from the red planet shows streams and pond landscapes left behind with minerals after the water dried up billions of years ago. Back in 2012, NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter spotted minerals with diverse rock types showing signs of past water on the planet. Isn't it amazing that science never stops fascinating us?
Hey, I mean, the truth is that space makes us happy, and we're happy to make you happy. We'll recap this week's top stories again in just a moment.
But right now, here's Madeline Lombardi with her debut edition of Western Perspective. Welcome to the team, Maddie. Great to have you on board.
Thank you so much, Ivan and Melly. I'm Madeline Lombardi, and welcome to Western Perspective. More about my debut in just a moment, but first, for many people in Australia, organ donation is a fairly common procedure post-life. Current research has shown multicultural communities are lacking when it comes to education surrounding organ donation. However, the Multicultural Services Centre of Western Australia and Donate Life Western Australia have organised 9 workshops to promote the awareness of organ and tissue donation and transplantation for culturally and linguistically diverse communities in Perth. Here's my interview with State Medical Director at Donate Life WA, Dr. Simon Towler.
Just for our viewers out there, can you explain what these organ and tissue donation and transplantation workshops entail for members of the CALD community?
Yeah, so we know that in Australia we need to reach the community to have the discussion about would you consider registering and consider being an organ donor if you die in circumstances where that's possible. We know that in Australia we've got a very big culturally diverse community. And routine messaging through the standard media, mostly in English, is not reaching those people. So we've been really pleased this year and really congratulate the Multicultural Services WA agency because they were the successful winners of one of the Organ and Tissue Authority community grants for this year. And they've been amazing. They've been developing a program, working on a program to train people to take the message out. And so what this is about today is acknowledging and celebrating that contribution. And I've been deeply impressed by what they've been able to achieve.
I want to know, why do you think figures are low or lower than non-CALD members when it comes to CALD community engagement in organ and tissue donation and transplantation in Western Australia?
Yeah, so there's a few things that are important to know. If you're registered on the Australian Organ Donor Registry and you have spoken to your family about your wishes, when it comes to that moment of somebody giving consent for organ donation to go ahead, the consent rate is about 90%. If you haven't had those conversations, then we see a consent rate of only about 40%. What we've got in the call community at the moment is lower registration numbers. Having said that, though, at some of the recent multicultural events, people have taken out their organ donor registration card and shown me that they're doing it, but we need to be able to reach that community more effectively so these conversations can be held. And we're looking to get the organ donor registration rates up in Western Australia, which at the moment are about 36-37% of the eligible population, but we know they're lower in the core group.
I want to know, were there any sort of cultural or religious barriers which were considered when designing the workshops as well?
So we've worked with the multicultural communities so that they set some of the framework around the messaging. The Organ and Tissue Authority has looked at a lot of different cultural groups, a lot of different religious groups. There have only been 2 groups that have been identified who are absolutely opposed to organ donation, and that's largely to do with the idea that organs should not be removed from the body after death. But we respect everybody's right to make a choice. So we're not aware of many groups where organ donation is in fact not acceptable. And we are continuing to work with groups where the donor consent rates are lower. And that includes core communities, but it also includes Aboriginal people. And, they're all a little bit different. Everybody has a right to choose. The community groups vary. Some of the Aboriginal clan groups vary in their views. We need to work consistently with these groups of people so we acknowledge their wishes, we understand their views, but we give each individual the right to make a choice if that's what they wish to follow.
I have one last question for you. So 8 podcasts have been developed, including which includes the voices of recipients receiving the organs. So each podcast has been translated into different code languages. Can you tell us a little bit more about this and your strategy in broadcasting this message via radio as well?
Yeah, so we work each year around a number of key events, and this week is Saffron Day Event. Saffron Day is really interesting because it was actually started by an Indian cultural group in Sydney after their young son died in a bus crash in India and became an organ donor. We've recognised that to reach people we've got to use different modalities, different media. So the development of the podcast in different languages, also hearing the message from recipients. I mean, in the end, the real story about organ donation is the lives that it changes. So we're hoping to use this platform, and that's been developed through the work of the Organ and Tissue Authority and work done here in WA to reach out to new groups of people. We explore constantly not using just mainstream media, looking for opportunities in community, and the podcasts become part of that opportunity to present. And I think they're much more appropriate. Giving a standard talk about what you can expect with organ donation or talking about all the transplants there are is not really getting to the heart of the message. We want to reach people at their heart. We want to understand what they think. And these podcasts are a great way to actually meet people in their own setting. It's a really interesting model in Queensland where they have what are called kitchen table meetings. And somebody just of a cultural group sponsors a kitchen meeting for a day, and things like the podcast can become the platform on which people in small groups can have these discussions, and we're happy to facilitate them. So I'm really pleased by this work. I think we're reaching out more. But when I met with somebody recently at a cultural event, they said there are 200 languages in Australia. We're going to be busy, and we're going to need all these clever people who speak multiple languages to still translate to some of the smaller linguistic groups.
And now, here's AMA WA spokesman Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly COVID-19 update and medical commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time. This week I've been travelling for the first time since the start of the pandemic. I'm over here in New Zealand for business meetings and spend a bit of time with my family. And I must say I'm surprised at the number of people who don't take the simple measure of wearing a mask when they get on an aeroplane, and they're quite happy to breathe in all that air from other people. I was measuring the carbon dioxide levels on the aeroplane that went straight up to about 1,600 from the 400 and something that it should be when you're outside. And this means that you're breathing in a lot of air that's already been in someone else's lungs. So with the rise in hospitalisations in Perth of about 30% in the last week, a large number of cases in Singapore, XBB, and with European hospitals filling up, I think it's time that people just got sensible, and even if you feel a little bit embarrassed at first, you'll notice that there's a smattering of other people around wearing masks who all understand that it's just a really good idea not to get this disease. It's less likely, of course, after you've had vaccination that you'll get severe disease or end up in ICU, although that can still happen. But long COVID is the serious concern if you get repeatedly infected with this. So just a reminder that it can affect your heart, can affect your brain, can cause stroke and heart attack down the track for people. And I'm not saying this to scare people, but it's the same way that we try to talk to smokers and say, you know what, habits really do make a difference in the long run. And the habit of breathing in dirty air when you're out in enclosed public spaces is one that our society is going to have to kick. I'm a bit disturbed to hear the news on WAMN this evening of, unfortunately, a mistake being made in identification of a family when bad news is being relayed. And I don't know anything about that particular case, but I can say that before we do every operation, when someone's in an operating theatre, we always check again and again and again the name, the details, confirm with the patient what they're having done, and never assume that you have no one's made a mistake with the paperwork. So systems need to be improved in order to protect people from this kind of distressing thing happening. Thanks very much for your time.
That's Dr. Andrew Miller's comment. And now a brief weather update. The mercury will stay just above 20 degrees for the next few days, 23 degrees on Monday, 22 on Tuesday and Wednesday, and 21 on Thursday. But here's the most important bit of all. At night time, the weather will remain cold and around 10 degrees and 9 degrees on Thursday night. So remember to stay warm. Before we conclude, I hope you've enjoyed my debut on Western Perspective. You can expect to see my face and stories on WAMN News through our featured and exclusive content in the future. That's all from me. Have a great evening, and I'll catch you very soon. Ivan and Melly, it's back to you.
What a wonderful presentation. Thank you and well done, Maddie. And right now, here's Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks, guys, for making news on 6 News. Treasurer Jim Chalmers prepares to make his budget speech amid calls for the federal government to raise the job seeker rate and axe the stage 3 tax cuts. Labor to consider any proposal put before them in an upcoming censure motion against Green Senator Lydia Thorpe. And nominations set to close in what is the second British Conservative Party leadership race this year. You can see full details on those stories and plenty more on our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News AU to find us, or head to our website 6newsau.com. For now, there, guys, it is back to you.
Thanks, Leo, and that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
Don't forget to subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club so we can continue our work in the community. Full details on wamnnews.com.au/news/extra. From Melly and myself, we wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.